All right, YouTube, the minority within the Senate and House, that is, the Democrats, whined and attempted to filibuster in order to force a vote on some gun control measures. All four of them were roundly defeated. Now, of course, Obama's minions are whining, and elements of the media too, that the Senate wants mass shootings to continue. I keep pointing this out to people. Now, when I point it out in a general sense here, most people understand that what I'm saying is statistically correct. They can look at the FBI's crime statistics all they want and they'll see that it's true. Gun crime in this country is at a 40-year low. There's no epidemic of shootings. There's no epidemic of gun crime. There's no epidemic of violent crime. There's no epidemic of property crime. The crime waves that hit us as a nation, they peaked back in the late 80s through the middle of the 1990s. And it was around, coincidentally, the time that the government sort of realized gun control's not working and started rescinding on a state level a lot of the prohibitions on things like concealed carry, open carrying, assault, certainly the assault rifle ban going the way of the dinosaur. These things coincide with the drop in gun crime in the United States that's led us to a point at which right now our crime rate is actually quite low. Now, I keep telling people, if you are concerned about dead kids or dead gay people or dead anybody else, if you really want to stop a lot of the violent crime in this country, all you have to do is end the drug war. Number one, a lot of the violent crime in this country is gang violence. It's not some crazy person wearing a ballistic vest and a combat helmet and carrying around a so-called assault rifle. It's some gang member with an easily concealed handgun, or sometimes not even a gun at all, sometimes a knife or their bare fist, beating somebody, stabbing them, shooting them, people robbing a liquor store, someone robbing a bank. This is the kind of crime that's more prevalent. A lot of these, they're drive-by shootings, contract killings, and these gangs largely, the reason why our cities are overrun in many respects with gang violence is due to the drug war. We spend too much money going after, Harold the Happy Hippie because he's growing a couple of pot plants. And then we wonder why we don't have enough money left over to actually go after gang violence in many of these regions of the country. I think it's retarded. And these gangs, half of them only exist in the first place to distribute the drugs that the cartels are selling them through them as middlemen in American cities all across from coast to coast, all the way up from Alaska down into Hawaii, fucking Puerto Rico, everywhere else. Everywhere is a center of drug trade. The United States has a big appetite for drugs. Now, if we decriminalize these substances, the cartels can't make money. The gangs can't really make money. When their revenue dries up, you don't have this problem. We saw this before, by the way. There's a historical precedent for what I'm talking about. Look at Prohibition. Prohibition is enacted. Gangs crop up in order to make the liquor and sell it to the speakeasies and sell it to the winos and stuff. What ends up happening, of course, the gangs, they start arming themselves because they're making good money. The government, instead of addressing the issue that, all these mafioso groups are cropping up all over the country because we banned alcohol and people have a demand for alcohol because it's an innate human characteristic to want to get fucking drunk once in a while. Instead, no, they ban machine guns. Ban the Tommy guns because then the gangsters will be less well armed. See, it didn't actually work. What ended up working was the end of Prohibition. You look at the alcohol usage rates that are on file from that era, and they're sky high. You think that there's a problem with drunkenness now. My God, back then it was a good 30% of the fucking population was constantly wasted. You'd have to go back to ancient times when people used to mix like wine and water because the water was so bad and they just wandered around in a constant half-drunken daze to find a culture that was so soaked in alcohol. Prohibition was the problem. The guns weren't the problem. The fact that police or bystanders were being shot by mafiosos, that didn't magically end because they said, you're going to have to turn in your automatic weapons. It didn't stop. They just switched to other weapons. People still ended up dying, and it sort of went away when Prohibition ended. Now we have a much wider form of prohibition that doesn't just affect alcohol, a depressant. It affects various stimulants. It certainly affects cannabis. It affects various psychedelics. It affects everything. Now, when we think about drugs, we can also see government hypocrisy. The government's telling you morphine is perfectly safe. Painkillers, all these over-the-counter painkillers that they now generally dislike prescribing to anyone because they know how easily you get hooked on them. Couple decades ago, I said, "Oh, you won't get hooked on them. We're just as long as it's in a clinical setting, there's no problem." Of course, that didn't turn out to be the case, and there's the other problem. That's the other main source of crime in this country. A lot of the population is addicted through no fault of their own. A lot of these people, they didn't go out and seek a high. They had surgery. They had some sort of problem. They went to the hospital. They got painkillers. They got hooked on those painkillers. And now, because the market's been flooded with so many painkillers and other opioids and so forth, people just get them off the street. They get hooked. They fuck up their lives. I feel sorry for them because they were told they were safe. No, it's just medicine. It's for your pain. You broke your leg. Here's a bottle of pills. Have fun. That's what they did. And the policies that were enacted allowing that to happen, that comes from government too. It wasn't just the pharma companies. They lied to everyone. The government empowered them to do that. By all accounts, according to our drug scheduling system, most of these opioids should be on a much higher schedule, and things like marijuana probably shouldn't be scheduled at all. The psychedelics, put them down. They should be decriminalized. We could address the issue of addiction. That clears up some crime. Dries up the cartels, number 2. Gun-free zones don't work. Gun control doesn't work. I don't care about Australia. When people talk about Australia, oh, shining example of success, you appear to be forgetting that Australia has no land borders. You appear to be forgetting that the demographics, the population density and the overall level of urbanization in a place like Australia is fundamentally different from in the United States. You have to understand this. It's a little bit different when you're running drugs by submarine or boat than when you can just tunnel underneath a land border. It's a totally different issue. And that's the source of crime. If you want violent crime in this country to decrease, get rid of the drug war. You have an additional bonus here. You've saved so much money on enforcing drug laws, you now have way, way more manpower and way, way more money to go after actual criminals. You know, the rapists and the thieves and the murderers, people who actually have done something wrong other than smoke a joint or drop a tab of acid. Or they were addicted because, 10 years ago they had surgery, they had corrective surgery, they got some pills and now they're a heroin junkie or something like that. Or they're smoking meth all day because they want to get more work done. These people, certainly, they have a fucking problem in many cases. That's why you give them addiction treatment. You do that and you save even more money. You can close half the prisons in the country. We don't need to have all these problems as a society. This is a proven way to deal with the situation. Now, you are never, no matter how much gun control you enact, going to stop mass shootings. You are never going to stop gang shootings. Even if you end the drug war, there will still be gang activity. It'll just be there'll be less of it. Chicago wouldn't have 20, 30 shootings over a fucking weekend anymore. Maybe they'd have 2 or 3. Be a hell of a lot safer. Still, anytime somebody gets shot, let me tell you what would happen. Let's say that Obama and Feinstein and all these other weirdo wackadoodles enacted the gun control they want. Let's say the Senate rolled over, played dead, said, okay, Obama, you get whatever you want because you're the Messiah and everybody loves you somehow. Let's say that happened. Gun violence might very slightly decrease. It was already decreasing to begin with. People will take that, people will ignore. They'll do that thing that they do with statistics and graphs, and they'll cut it off at the point at which the gun control was enacted. They'll say, oh, it declined 10%. Oh, wait, it declined 400% over this same period. But just ignore that because that was really great, super double plus good gun control level time period. That's what they'll do. But they'll parrot about that. Then there'll be another mass shooting. Somebody somehow will still obtain the assault rifle. Somebody will still use the handgun. Blah, 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 blah. Somebody will take a katana and start cutting people's heads off in a crowded street. It happened in China with a mass stabbing incident. 29 people died there. I bet you didn't hear about that from fucking Obama. Because they're foreigners, he doesn't care about them, and because it didn't involve guns. China's basically the model for his economic policies anyway, fucking interventionist. then they would call for more gun control. It'd say, oh, what we did wasn't enough. It was a good first step. Let's have a little bit more. The slippery slope, when you're talking about people like Feinstein, it actually is real. And that's the scary part. A lot of times they say, oh, there's no slippery slope. We just want common sense gun reform. That's funny because many decades ago when they banned automatic weapons, they said that was common sense gun reform and everything else was fine. They said it was fine. They said there was this alone will take care of the issue. We don't need anything further. The problem is because there will always be violent crime, they will steadily attempt to erode the Second Amendment more and more. And that's the point. It's unconstitutional. I don't give a fuck what Obama says about morality anyway, because he kills tens of thousands of civilians every year. When I bring this up, when Democratic partisans talk about how great Obama is for suggesting an assault rifle ban or whatever, and I point out that he's responsible for the deaths of many tens of thousands of civilians, what's their only comeback? W did worse. W killed more people. Okay, that exonerates Obama, the Nobel Peace Prize winning goofball, for killing tens of thousands of civilians. And none of these people find it even slightly hypocritical that Obama sends automatic weapons to cartels in Mexico, like the Sinaloa. He sends lethal aid to a bunch of Islamic militants, a bunch of Sharia state nationalists over in Syria, while ranting about how somehow you having an AR-15 is inappropriate. You're violent, you're evil, you can't be trusted with that much firepower, which, trust me, isn't significantly more advanced than any decent hunting rifle. But over there, the cartels, the people that are helping him continue the drug war so he can get rich, and helping all of his friends fucking get rich and more powerful, they deserve machine guns and body armor. And over there in Syria, they need even more than that. They need like tanks and missiles and everything else. I don't fucking think so. I think that's retarded. It's already at the point, just by banning automatic weapons, and I mean real automatics, I don't mean pull the trigger and one bullet comes out. Just by doing that, we've got a lopsided system whereby the civilians are less well armed than the government. The original intent of our founders was that they should be the same. That yes, indeed, the people should basically function in a martial society. They should be the main fighting force. If there's a standing army at all, it should be lopsided. It should be stacked against the government to prevent tyranny. It's the fucking point. When people rant about how you have to prove a need, you have to be able to hunt effectively with it. You can do that with an AR-15. What? So it has 30 bullets in the fucking clip or magazine or cartridge or whatever the Democrats are calling it now. Okay, it has 30 bullets. That doesn't mean you need to fire them all off. Hopefully the person is skilled enough at marksmanship so it only takes one or two shots. For some people that's not the case. There are certainly people who shouldn't be wielding firearms. But there's nothing there's no reason to give the government the right to determine who is who in this situation. Preferably the person's friends and family have stepped in if they're a total moron and have almost shot themselves numerous times and told them you probably shouldn't be doing that shit. Hopefully they took them to the range so they can learn. Hopefully they know firearm safety. Some people do, some people don't. But the thing is, firearms are generally the least safe in the hands of a government. Look at what Obama has done over in other countries. He doesn't even need guns. He just uses his toy drones. Look at what W did to hundreds of thousands of people in Iraq and Afghanistan. Look at what Al-Qaeda does all the time. A quasi-governing force, sort of a militant body. The answer is not additional gun control that's just going to inconvenience the average U.S. citizen. I think people should be more well-armed. Of course they should. They should be more well-armed, more well-trained. We should have a martial society, as our founders intended. It doesn't make it a violent society. It makes it a more polite society. It makes it a society in which people have respect for the ability to bear arms. They have respect for their weapon. They hopefully have respect for one another. But you're never going to eliminate all violent crime by proposing an assault rifle ban or expanded background checks. It won't do anything. These proposals that have been made are made on emotional appeals to the Democratic partisan base that doesn't seem to realize that such proposals will not decrease our violent crime rate. That's why I oppose them. It's not I want to see children die. It's I want to see fewer people die in general. So I think people should be able to defend themselves. I don't begrudge others that right. And the other thing I've seen pointed out is People will say, well, I trust myself with a gun, but I don't trust anyone else with a gun, so that's why I carry a gun. A fundamentally decent proposal. If everyone argues from that ethos, it's not a paranoid thing to say. It's, I'm going to defend myself. I'm going to have the means to defend myself. The government can't do jack shit about it. The government has no right to propose an assault rifle ban or background checks in any way. If a private business wants to conduct them, that's fine. The government doesn't actually have the constitutional authority to implement most of the gun control we already have. We tolerate it, but there's no reason we would tolerate more when it's not going to do anything. In fact, it might do the opposite. It might create more gun crime. Because then the gangs say, oh, well, nobody's going to be firing back with one of those bigger weapons that we can't field because they're not easily concealed. I guess it's time to go rape and murder some more people. And oftentimes, the other thing, and this is in closing, the last thing they'll say, if you point out the fact that most of the gun crime that remains in this already relatively safe nation is gang-related and relegated to a few urban centers in the country, they'll call you a racist. As though there aren't fucking white people in these gangs too. There are no white gangs. Aryan Nation doesn't exist. Oh, the fucking Grand Clan Aryan Brotherhood. No, that's certainly not a gang. They sell drugs too. It's the same fucking thing. It's just a racial prison gang. White people do it. There are Latino gangs. There are Asian gangs of various types. There are black gangs. There are gangs that don't really give a fuck. They're just there to make money and they don't really care what race you are. It happens all the fucking time. We can dry up all the cartel activity just by ending the drug war. That's going to cripple all the inner city gangs. Pretty soon, half of them will disappear. It'd be great. It'd be wonderful. You know, instead of being gangs, they'd go legit like the fucking mafia did after Prohibition ended and used all that money they had made to buy barbershops and pizza parlors and stuff. And yeah, they cook the books. Yeah, there's still the occasional problem where somebody gets a razor blade slit across their throat during their haircut because somebody paid enough and didn't like them. Yeah, that still happens occasionally in Gangland USA, but it's a hell of a lot less violent than what was going on before, when somebody with a Tommy gun would just start mowing the police down, when you had fucking hot rods racing across the countryside full of bootleg moonshine. So I think I much prefer it when the government takes a hands-off approach and doesn't create a black market that just drives crime up even further. That's about all. Peace out.